Our next speaker is a very old friend of mine. We love investing in the same extreme ideas. So Mark is a collaborator in extreme ideas. He's also a professor at Stanford Business School. And we've often taught a case together on, and he's a professor of entrepreneurship. And we've taught a case on the power of persistence. He always tells the story of how he quoted his wife when she was dating somebody else. And my story is about how I got into Stanford Business School after being rejected twice. And I only got admitted 2 days before classes started. So we've taught entrepreneurship lessons for a while. But he also wrote a very famous article called The Sales Learning Curve, which I recommend everybody read. Most importantly, he was the founder of Veritas, and he grew this company from 0 to $1.5 billion in software revenue. And he'll talk about how he made 40 quarters in a row. So Mark, all yours. I will say, in the 80s, when he was a sales manager at Data General at Sun, we kicked their butt.
Yes, Vinod is very, very proud of the fact that the best salesman in the industry worked for me and he hired them. So we have a long history together. It's very nice. So I want to talk about two topics today. I want to talk about how I made 44 quarters in a row, which is kind of a good story. And I also want to talk about this thing I call the virtuous cycle. It's not kind of in the literature or in the community or anything like that, but we'll go to those two things. And I believe I asked that the Sales Learning Curve paper be here, and I hope that you get a chance to read it. I think it's very informative for people at your stage when you're just starting out. So, setting the corporate goals. The corporate goals are the beginning of your operating plan and your pitch to the outside world. The further out in time, the more the company can affect the revenue plan. You can do that with new products, with new markets, with strategic partnerships, leveraging industry trends and changes. However, in the year in front of you, as you look at your operating plan, these initiatives are measured in years and not in months. And it's unlikely that they're going to have an impact on you. In the short term, any company of size has limited ability to affect the next 12 months. It's all really about how many people you have on board, what their productivity is, when you're going to hire new people. The new products and the new programs, they're not going to really change the outcome very much. So it's actually quite predictable. So what you want to do to get this corporate revenue number set is you have to negotiate with this CRO. And what you want the CRO to give you is the highest possible number that you're certain you will make. Now, this is a very difficult task because you have to negotiate with someone who has spent his entire career negotiating quotas. And the reason he's the CRO is because he's good at that. He's great at that. That's how he's been successful in the world before. And negotiating a great quota means I want a quota in which I make the maximum amount of money, so it's the lowest possible. Lower forecasts, anything less will inhibit the investment in the future of the business. You want to get the maximum number that you know you can make. You want to negotiate with the CRO. You want to incent him. And I did this, and it was very unusual and very rare. The company was pretty large, but I took the CRO off a revenue plan. Every CRO is on, like, you're going to make 27 million or 400 million, and if you do better than that, you're going to make more money. I took him off that plan. And you have to find a way to make the CRO, as well as all of your C-level executives, think like a CEO, and be your personal agent when they go out in the world and do the right thing for the company, not the right thing for their bottom line and their income for that year. I actually talked to, I forgot her name, but I was talking about after the presentation about CEO coaching, I was talking about what I call micro leadership and macro leadership. Micro leadership is how you create the environment with your direct reports to do that, to have them become your direct agents and think like you. So the CRO budget is typically a percentage of the total amount of sales, and the best thing to do is to trust your CRO to say, you have to define how many of this type of person, that type of person, and what kind of allocation of resources you want to make, and then you have to hold them accountable for the outcome of that. So you want to create this revenue forecast. You want to end up with what I call an accurate and conservative forecast. Now, and you want to set achievable expectations. So we kind of think about that as counterculture to Silicon Valley. Setting an achievable goal does not mean that you will do less than you otherwise would do if you set a higher goal. It turns out that all the sales reps that are in your organization are working on their own plan. And their own plan says the more they do, the more money they make. And as they kind of go through the year, they're going to strive to beat that plan and make a lot of money. And they're going to do that whether the corporate goal is high or low. So it's in your business, it's in your interest to make sure that that is an achievable goal. I was talking to someone about this earlier, and they said, oh, you mean sandbagging? And the answer to that is yes, we mean sandbagging. When they all perform, you'll beat this plan. And this is all goodness. In fact, you worry about potential investors, and everybody says, well, we got to go with a big plan, in order to impress them. It turns out if you go with an achievable plan and you make the plan, then you can say to the investors, we have traction, and we're going to go do this again next year. And that's a powerful message. They're always looking for that kind of capability. So a warning, everyone is gaming the system when you're doing these forecasts. Everybody has an interest here. Manufacturing wants a, kind of a plan that looks exactly like this so they could plan their resources. Sales wants a low plan. Finance wants a high plan. Marketing and engineering and the board of directors, everybody's in the game of telling you what you ought to be doing. I have seen too many CEOs get up on their soapbox and tell everyone to strive for the stretch goal, an unachievable number, and it usually ends badly. So, given this as background, what did I do at Veritas? How does this convert into 44 quarters in a row? It was 44, not 40, just to be clear. I mean, I don't want to take, Okay, so here we go. Okay. So we did a 0 to 15 to 1.5 billion revenues in 11 years. It's very interesting because it turns out we did 0 to 36 million in 7 years. And then in the next 5 years, we went from 36 million to 1.5 billion, which is breathtaking. And we went from about 140 employees to about 6,000, just to give you a sense of the velocity of that whole thing. We went public in 1993 at a valuation of 64 million post-money. It's a different time frame than we have today. We raised $16 million, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven, that I'd have enough money to do whatever I ever wanted to do. It was great. In 2000, before the nuclear winter, we had a valuation of 64 billion. It's 1,000 times what our original valuation was. The accelerated growth rate that I talked about here was a function of what we call strategic transformation. So we had a business that we could see on a trajectory like this, and we said we have to change the trajectory, and we sat down and we thought about that. I've written a paper on that, and I've asked Vinod to let me come back next year and do a presentation on strategic transformation. I think it's a very important thing to think about as you build a business. You don't want a company, no matter how good it is, to be a one-trick pony. You want to be able to build a company that has endurance. So how did I do this? So first thing we did, okay, so the first thing we did was we set the CRO quota at a discount to the rep quotas, the sum of the rep quotas of discount of 20%. So the rep quotas are 100 million. Our internal plan for ourselves, 80 million. We took the board plan, we took that plan, which was the plan we were working on, and then when we reduced that by 5% and said to the board, this is what we're going to do. And then we took the guidance to the street down another 3%. So the net commit was the rep quota minus 26%. So 74% of the total amount of assigned quota in the company. How can you possibly miss that? How could you possibly not make that goal? So this kind of ensures that you're going to get there. And in fact, that's exactly what we did. We made our quota, our external numbers and our board numbers every single quarter, quarter after quarter. I never, ever gave in to pressure from the board or investors to raise the plan. There's a lot of pressure in the world around you. Do more, raise the plan. You go to the board with a $9 million plan. I've seen this so many times. The board comes back and asks for an $11 million plan. I don't know if I can go backwards here. I don't think I can. The board comes back and asks you for an $11 million plan to show a higher growth rate so to be able to raise it the next round. At the end of the year, the company achieves $10 million. And the question you have to ask is, would you rather be a hero on a $9 million plan or unemployed on an $11 million plan? Beating the plan will actually help you raise money for the next round, as I mentioned that a little while ago. Okay, so another topic, loosely related, is what I call the virtuous cycle. How managing sales impacts corporate culture. And it's hard to kind of connect those things. But I've been teaching at Stanford Business School. I not only taught entrepreneurship, I co-created a course called Building and Managing Professional Sales Forces, which is something that's missing from most business schools, which I simply don't understand, because when you go into the real world, that's kind of part of the business kind of ambiance. So I had this insight about how setting sales rep quotas impacts the entire company's operations and culture. And it's hard to, in your mind, connect that. So as a company matures, we know the sales rep productivity. And we note that when 70% make quota, some will be below and some will be above, and a large majority will be above, and many significantly above. So if we say we're going to set these quotas so that we know, because we have kind of this insight into productivity and prior year's performance, that at least 70% of the people we're going to make goal. And the average of that will likely be above the total quota that's assigned to the sales force. So when sales overachieves, what happens? Big thing that happens, we avoid end of quarter, end of year discounting and channel stuffing and other bad acts. Sales reps, any of you guys come from a sales background? Not too many. Okay, sales reps negotiate the path of least resistance. Is it easier to get the company to discount or get the customer to pay more? And the buyers know you're end of quarter, and they're just sitting there waiting to kind of trap you into a deal, right? But when the quarter is in the bag, you have the power to say no. And that gives you the opportunity to have higher overall margins in the company, et cetera. And conversely, when you're desperate, bad decisions are made and bad things happen. So when revenue is above expectation, manufacturing efficiency is improved, discounts are shallower, operating expenses are a lower percentage of revenue, and the excess gross margin falls to the bottom line, which can be reinvested in the business or a permanent improvement in the company's operating model. And you're a hero to your investors, your board, and maybe most importantly to your employees. You're always, as a leader, worried about the adhesion that you have with your employees and how committed they are to the company. When profit is above expectation, the growth rate of the profit has increased because you did more as a percentage than you did last time. With greater absolute profit and greater growth in profit and consistency in performance, that's what gives you a high stock price. That was the formula that we had. Was we always beat the numbers. We were always ahead of the numbers. the expectations were always exceeded, and we kind of kept doing that over and over again, and we had huge multiples in our stock. Greater multiples yield higher stock prices. Higher stock prices is the mother's milk of leadership. It improves the reputation of the company among your customers, among your competitors. Everybody thinks you're a hot company. It rewards the employees. Every employee in Silicon Valley is driven by stock. As the stock price goes up, the employees are rewarded. It's a wonderful thing. One of the best things that ever happened to me, and I think most people who build big companies will say this, is how many people walked away able to pay down their mortgage, pay for their children's school, pay for whatever, became millionaires. It's one of the most rewarding things you get as a leader in a company. It creates a winning team and high morale across the company, not just in sales. The whole company feels like they're on a winning team. It allows you to recruit and retain the best employees. It strengthens your competitive position. It lowers your cost of capital. If you need to raise more money and you have a stock price, it's less dilutive to do it when you have a low stock price. And it allows the company to invest in the next generation of growth opportunities. So this is all, mother's milk, as I said before. So this is a virtuous cycle. All of these very virtuous outcomes started with setting the quotas such that greater than or equal to 70% of reps will meet or exceed quota. Who'd have thunk it? Okay, I have two final thoughts, and then I'll be able to take some questions. First, many of you, most of you, I think, here are CEOs. And they say it's lonely at the top. And the reason they say it's lonely at the top is because it is. You can have acquaintances and you can be friendly with people, but you actually have no friends as a CEO, and there's really no one to talk to. You can't really talk to the people working for you. You really can't talk to the board. You really can't talk to anybody else because they don't have enough context, right? You can't go home and talk to your spouse because you can explain it to them, but they basically say, well, what do I know? So if you want a friend, you buy a dog. Let me explain how profound buying a dog is. If you lock your spouse or loved one in the garage and your dog is locked in the garage, and you open the garage an hour later, who's happy to see you? I don't have a dog right now because my wife says no dog, and I have to make a decision. Do I want a dog? Do I want a wife? So it's a tough decision. I'm still thinking about it. Okay. One final thought that I always include in my presentations, because I think it's words to live by. Regret for the things we did can be tempered by time. It's regret for the things that we not do that is inconsolable. So along the way in life, lots of people have opinions about what you should do and how you should live your life. There will be a day of accounting for you. Someday you'll be, my age, and you'll say, did I do what I wanted to do? Did I live my dreams? Or did I say woulda, coulda, shoulda? I would have done that if, I could have done that, but I should have done that. You don't want to do that when you kind of go look back at your life at that point in time. I believe these are words to live by. These are words that I live by, and I would encourage you to tell them to your children. Thank you.
There's a hand up there already in the back, so somebody get a mic there.
Thanks, great talk. The notion of discounting the quotas makes a lot of sense, of course, but the reps can see what you've told to the street, right? So how do you, you're telling them two things, right? You're saying, here's 100%, this is your quota, but also actually 26% less is fine. How did you manage that?
Yeah, it's not really a problem of any kind because the reps actually don't know what the sum of the quotas are. They know their quota, they know maybe their quota in their district or branch or whatever it is, but they don't really have the overall quota for the company as kind of piece of information that's in front of them. They live in typically a little bit smaller. The higher up they get in the organization, the more insight they have, but they're on the same team, right?
Could we get the mic there?
Does that answer your question? I'll be around for a few minutes if you want to talk somewhere.
Thank you for the talk. Actually, it helps a lot, not just in quotas, but in like timelines and setting targets in general.
Okay.
But a question about guidance in general. I've tried to read a bunch of papers on whether you need to offer guidance or do no guidance, and there doesn't seem to be any difference for companies that just give no guidance. So I could see using this for our board and so on, but what if you offer no public guidance?
Well, the way it actually works is that, you have your opinion. They have been studying your company in quite a bit of detail. They come up with their own opinion. It's pretty good. They're pretty close to what's going on. So you can say something or not say something. They're going to still believe what they believe, and they're going to use their own personal guidance. All the analysts are going to do that, and they're going to spread that into the investment community. So I wouldn't worry about it either way. It's both ways are fine.
Question here, and then over here. Go ahead.
Awesome presentation. Thank you so much for being here. My question was about the ROI.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Hi. Was about the ROI. I love that. I tried to do something similar. I got a lot of weird looks because I think you want to incentivize your CRO, your head of sales, to be looking at ROI, not just top line number, because there's a really efficient spend ways you can get to that top line number. So what is the metric then that you were goaling your CRO on? Was it profitability or?
It's a great question. So this was later stage in the company, and my bonus plan, which was half of my income, was based on EPS, earnings per share. And I put him on exactly the same plan as well as the rest of my senior team. And EPS is a very interesting thing because now my CRO not only has to worry about how much revenue he's going to get, he's going to have to worry about the taxes, right? Completely far away. But you want to get them, and I talked about this, micromanagement and macro management. Micromanagement, in my mind, is how the relationship between you as the CEO and your senior team, and how that works, and how do you build infinite trust. I mean, because when you're a bigger company, everybody's off doing stuff, right? And what you really want to have them be is you. You want to have them make the right decisions. Not that I'm, able to make all the right decisions, but you want to have the frame of mind of doing so. So I put them on EPS, and EPS is the ultimate measure of everything that happened in the company, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we did. It was great, and it was very interesting. He was very happy that he was now on EPS instead of revenue because it was more dignified. It was a happy moment for him. There's someone here who knows my CRO, and he and I today are like this. We're just bonded. I say when we get together, I say, and this is how close we are. We went to war together, and you saved my life, and I saved your life. And we came home victorious. Pretty cool, huh? That's the way we feel. Go ahead.
Thank you. Great talk. So I have two questions. So one is the formula you showed where you're shaving off that 26%. What quarter did you come about that? When did you realize that was the best thing to do? And the second question I have is for technical founders like myself, if you have any quick pearls of wisdom on sales side and maneuvering, would love to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we put that in place. I think I told you we had this inflection point in the company. That's when we put it in place, when we started thinking about that. And we were a public company for a long time. We went public in '93, so from '93 to 2001, before I hired my successor. So we were a public company all that time, so we thought about it. Now, the best advice I can give you if you're a technical person and you haven't been a CEO before is go learn finance. Because when you run a company, and I think everybody will tell you this, every decision, if you think about finance, there's an income statement, a balance sheet, and a cash flow. And every time you change a number in one place, it ripples through everything, right? So what you have to do is have that model in your mind so that you understand the economic consequences of your decision. And in order to do that, you have to kind of digest it and make it internal to yourself.
Question back there.
Hi, thank you so much for the talk. I have this question around, as sales teams grow, sort of they get into territorial plans, and there's multiple hierarchies that come, like as you go from 8 A's to 20 A's to 50 A's to 100 A's. How do you and those are like step functions of change in the company's trajectory, and how sales gets enabled. How have you seen those play out well? Because they're always it's hard to make those transitions as you're scaling the team. And then sort of similar to that, but a bit different, is how have you seen good models of new product sales, and if the company's coming up with new products, sales reps generally tend to be comfortable selling the things that they know will sell.
That's why I told you in the beginning that it isn't going to affect your current year. It's going to affect the year after. Yeah.
But I guess organizationally, do you spin off a separate team, or do you keep those incentives intact in one cohesive team?
So you could do either, and depends on how unique the product is. If the product is a kind of an addition to or an enhancement of existing products, you just have it sold by the regular sales force. If you're trying a new initiative and maybe a new space or a new technology, you probably want to have, at least initially, a small sales force to bring that to market, so that you can go through the sales learning curve that I mentioned before. Now, as you get larger, the biggest friction point inside of sales organizations is commission splits. Anybody know about that? Commission splits? Everybody's like, I did all the work and he's getting all the money. What's that all about, right? So we solve this problem, particularly as you get multiple channels of distribution, and something goes in through a distributor or a partner, and then somebody says, well, who's responsible and who owns that and who did the work and stuff like that. And what we ended up doing is we ended up increasing the quotas by about 80 or 90%, and decreasing the commission rate, so that we had the opportunity to hand out more commission splits without having aggravation. It was all kind of smoke and mirrors, but it worked just great. Everybody walked away happy.
Yes, last question, Nikolai.
Hey, so I have one question. I mean, the 26% discount makes a lot of sense at a more mature stage, right? But say you're like an early growth stage company, you grow, say, 5 times in a year. And then when we look at that formula, it's really about the number of reps you have.
That's right.
So the decision there is how much do you grow them, right? So in our case, we grew them a lot, then, had some bad apples, cut them. But how do you think about because you want to grab as much of the market as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And to me, really, at this stage, board guidance, that 9 or 11 versus, say, if you were previously 1 or whatever, that doesn't really matter for the fate of the company if you grew 3-4 times, right?
Yeah.
But how do you think about that, and when do you how do you set that number, right? Because that's at the root of the whole thing.
So this really goes to the sales learning curve, which I encourage you to read. It's 12 pages, Harvard Business Review paper, and it basically says that when you go to market in your first year, you think you have a product that's GA and people are going to buy it because you've done some beta testing, you've talked to some friendly customers. But as you go into the market, you learn that your user interface is not enough, you don't have enough interfaces to other software, the product positioning is wrong, the pricing is wrong. You learn all these things. And the way you can measure how much you're learning and where you are is by looking at the yield per salesperson. How much revenue per salesperson are we doing today? And you want to drive that yield up so that you can have a high productivity. And the way you drive that yield up is you go through this learning curve. It's all in the paper, and it's fairly technical. Actually, Vinod wanted me to do it, but you can't do it in 20 minutes. It takes 45 minutes to do that presentation, so I decided not to. But I can talk to you afterwards and give you more kind of insight into that. Okay.
Well, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.